Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. How you doing this week, Chip?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. It's been a strange few weeks. We've gone here in the Northeast from 70 degrees to snow to 70 degrees again.
Yeah, last
So,
Monday was like 30 degrees and windy out, and today we're in our shirt sleeves and it's been 70 degrees, 70 plus for the last 4 days, and we got another day coming up tomorrow like that. But it's just been unbelievable. Just went through an election. My granddaughter's 11 months old today. There's all kinds of wild, crazy things going on, but here we are, and we're going to get organized.
yes, and it's funny. The one thing I found absolutely amazing about these past 2 weeks is that here in the Northeast, for most of the summer, we had a drought. About a week and a half ago, we had snow. And since we had the snow, we've had so much rain that now my lawn looks fantastic for the first time all year. So, you never know what's going to happen.
Yep, got to get the lawnmower out one more time, that's for sure.
Yep. So today we are returning to the Success Showcase bookshelf, and we are pulling out at least what I consider a classic in business books. It is Getting Things Done by David Allen. And to give you an idea of my history with GTD, Getting Things Done, the first edition, was actually the first business book I read after starting the Modern Observer Group 11 years ago. And the principles behind GTD became a part of the foundation of the operations and process section of our Biznetics process. That's how much the principles of GTD affected me. I think the book is absolutely fantastic. What we're going to be talking about is primarily the second edition. And the big change between the first and second editions is more of a transition to digital. First edition was very paper oriented. And as most of us know, paper is sort of falling by the wayside. We get a lot more information digitally. So David Allen did a second edition where he updated the book to include more digital methods. What I find ironic is he did not make as big a shift to digital as I would have thought. This book has actually spawned an entire industry. He does not recommend any specific software in his book. He talks about software in general, digital and organizational methods in general. Because of this, an entire industry has sprouted up of organizational tools and software that are based on the GTD method. And the funny thing is, in the second edition, he talks a lot about, well, you'll still need paper for this, but the industry that the book spawned has actually eliminated a lot of the needs for paper that he talks about. So GTD has taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean, I did not read the old book, but I can identify a lot with that because I've been obviously incorporating a lot of this in different bits and pieces into my business and getting organized over the years, and actually made me feel pretty good. But there's some things that I learned that I have to go back to, so it's been a really good refresher course for me. But exactly what you're talking about as far as going from the old system, which is manual, paper, and so on and so forth, to the new digital age was very interesting. And you can download the old book as a PDF, which I did do after I listened to the new book on audible.com. But it starts with getting control of your life, and it talks about the 5 stages of mastering workflow. And this is what drives the whole thing. And in the old book, they call it collect, which is basically bringing stuff in. And in the new book, they call it capture, which is really the same thing. But in the old book, they talked about your physical in basket, note taking devices, electronic note taking devices, recordings, and so on and so forth. It's basically gathering all the things that you have to work on. And then step number two in the old book was process, which we can all identify with. And the new word for that is clarity, which is basically what is it, what you're going to do with it, is it actionable now, or are you going to do something later on, and so on and so forth. And once you come up with your plan, then number three is getting organized, which that's the same in both books. And that's organizing how you're going to be doing things, who's doing what, and that kind of stuff. And then number four is the process of reviewing or reflecting in the new book to see how you're doing. And then basically, number five in the old book is do, and number five in the new book is engage. So it covers the whole process from getting that initial email in or getting this or that or whatever into a finished project and everything in between. And it's really, really well set up. There's also a PDF that you can download that charts this whole thing from the new book called the GTD Workflow Processing Organizing Chart. And if you just Google getting things done, you should be able to find that and print that out for yourself. So, but anyway, you've been with us for a long, long time. So start us off.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I started using this 11 years ago, and the big problem I had with re-listening to the book was that as I'm re-listening to it, I was consumed by an absolute need to clean and organize my office. And he makes a very good point that the book is about getting organized, but the trick to it isn't getting organized, it's staying organized. And that's why the principles behind this book work so well, because it talks about a weekly overview and going through these things on a regular basis and not letting anything pile up. One of the changes between the two books, actually, that happened in real life but didn't get acknowledged in the book. He talks about checklists, and checklists are a fantastic tool. I often refer to the Mayo Clinic method. And the Mayo Clinic actually assigned a checklist to every patient. And that checklist follows the patient. And the doctors have to take a look at the checklist. Just by implementing this list, they increased patient care, decreased costs. It was amazing. And again, all it was a simple checklist. In the books, both first and second edition, David Allen talks about having to-do lists in specific places, so that you have a to-do list by your computer for all the things that you have to do on your computer, a to-do list by your phone for all of your calls. And this way, whenever you're by the to-do list, you're also by the equipment you need to achieve those actions. The problem is that technology has overtaken that. And the fact of the matter is, there's almost no time that any of us are away from a phone or away from a computer, because our smartphone has all of these tools. So, what he introduced, which I think is very important, is the concept of sublists. Because now you really do need to have everything on a centralized, preferably digital list that's always with you. But you need to break things down into what you need to do with a word processor, what you need to do with your phone, what you need to do, in person. This way, when you are, have time available, you can pull out your phone and start doing whatever it is you need to get done, and use your free time, or the time you're actually waiting for something, more effectively. And one of the things that he tries to make very clear is that the purpose of GTD is to get your ship running at peak efficiency. And what he points out is, just because you are running at peak efficiency doesn't mean you're necessarily going in the right direction. So you need to do strategic planning on top of GTD to make sure you're going in the right direction, GTD is there to make sure whatever direction you pick, you're getting there with peak performance.
Yeah, and again, the logical steps is capturing the information, clarifying your process, organizing things, reviewing and reflecting and engaging. And the way that the chart starts, it's just wonderful. I mean, it's all graphics and so on and so forth, but it says the random inputs is just a bunch of stuff. And it could be a phone call, it could be an email, it could be an idea that you've written down on paper, and so on and so forth. And basically, you're going to have a whole bunch of stuff in your inbox or whatever you're going to put that in. And then the next thing you have to do right away, and you got to go to your inbox every single day to get this thing cleaned out and put new stuff in there, because you don't want to have an inbox that's 3 weeks old. So the first thing you take a look at is the item on top and say, what is this? And this same for everything. What is it? Number two, is it actionable? If it is actionable, then you have to go through the process of what's the next action and doing it and so on and so forth, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, because this is really the start of the process. But if it isn't, then what it does, if it's not actionable right now, it has three different options for that. Number one is trash. Just throw it out. How many times do you hang on to stuff and say, I'm going to get to it tomorrow, and you know that you're never going to use it? Just make a habit of throwing it out. And that includes cleaning out your email boxes so you don't have 10,000 emails clogging up your system and that kind of stuff. Number two would be to incubate it for possible later action. So he recommends having a someday maybe list or folder for that thing, and then a date specific trigger if it's something that you got to act on later on. I mean, I've talked about my manual tickler system where I have folders for every day of the month and then folders for every month of the year. And that's one way to put that in a folder with a date on it so you get to it. And then number three.
And he does describe that tickler system that you use in the book.
Yep, he does. And the third thing is that you can use something later on for reference, saying, I know I'm going to use this sometime, and I got to put it someplace in a folder or a digital list and so on. What I often do is I'll just copy stuff in a Word document and save it and logically place it in a folder on my computer so I can go back and reference it later on. So, it's like using a filing system. So that's if it's not actionable. If it is, then what's the next action? I love the first thing. If it's going to take less than 2 minutes, just do it right now. Don't go back to it. Don't let it. You talked about time efficiency. How much time have you wasted over something that's been sitting there? And once you got to it 3 weeks later, it took you 2 minutes to do it after 10 minutes of anxiety saying, I got to do it. I mean, so you either do it or you delegate it to somebody else. And then number three is you could defer it for me to do on a later date or so on, or to do as soon as I can for the next action, because it's going to take a little bit longer. And in delegating, you have a lot of different ways to do that today that you didn't have when you first read the book, which is you do have digital communication within your company and so on and so forth. So those first steps where you can say, yes, it's actionable, and put it, what you're going to do with it. Are you going to do it now? Are you going to delegate it? Or are you going to defer it? Or no, you're either going to trash it, you're going to put it someplace to do it later. And if it's time bound, you're going to put it someplace where it is time bound. And then number three, put your reference file together.
Right, and when you defer an action, he's very clear that you need to place it somewhere that you are checking on a regular basis. If it's something that has to be done on a specific date, there should be a note attached to your on your calendar that this is the date it has to be done, preferably a few days before it's actually due. If it's not time bound, your to-do list, you should put it on as this is the next action you have to take. You have to be able to check these things on a regular basis. Um, and you can adapt what he's saying in terms of the process. When he talks about the emails, he talks about creating folders for every project and all that. And I have that in my email system. However, if something is deferred and it has an action that I have to do, I deliberately leave it in the inbox, which he keeps talking about clearing that inbox. But I found when I clear the inbox and I put those deferred actions into a project folder, they're out of sight, out of mind, and they don't get done. So I leave them in the inbox and I use that as part of the to do. One of the things he talks about with software is the fact that there's no one piece of software that's going to do everything you need. And this is absolutely true. However, software has become much more integrated. For the past 11 years, I have used a to do list program called Things. And the whole reason that I started using Things is because it was built as a GTD tool. And that was how they were advertising it at the time. It was all about this was, built to take advantage of the getting things done process. Well, all these years later, that to-do list is no longer just a to-do list. It also integrates with my calendar, so everything in my calendar shows up on that same screen. I also use a CRM tool called Daylight, which integrates with my mail and my contacts. So all of these things are being brought together. And there are actually tools you can use now, like Zapier, that create new integrations and automations between software programs. So while when he wrote even the second edition, he was talking about the fact that you need multiple software packages if you're going to do things digitally, and you need to check each of these every day. It's now becoming less necessary to check every piece of software every day, because you can integrate things into a single dashboard or two dashboards and just have everything you need there. That is a key piece of GTD, is that your to-do list, your calendar, any place that you are putting things to do has to be checked on a regular basis. If
Yeah.
you write things down on a pad and just put that pad away somewhere and don't look at it, you're not going to close the loop. And the Chip was about to say something, so I will toss it to him, and I will
Yeah.
get back to what closing the loop means in a minute.
Well, I mean, I am not close to being as organized as you are as far as using all the software packages available. As you know, I still walk around with a calendar that I do in Excel, which has a page for every week with the days of the week across the top and the times of the day across the bottom for the next 6 weeks, which I update that every time I make an appointment. I write it down on there and print that out weekly and redo that. And then I also have my to-do list, my task list on another piece of paper where I have everything that's listed there. My inbox in my software program, I still use Microsoft Outlook on my computer. And I do have my inbox right now. There's 15 messages in there, and I just turned it on. So a couple of them are going to get deleted. But where they go right away is they either go into the deleted items folder from there. And I also have a junk mail folder, which a lot of my email gets screened into that automatically. And all I do is take a look through that very, very quickly and delete the whole thing into a deleted items folder. So that's always empty. But then underneath my inbox, I have a folder that's called active. And the active folder contains subfolders. Number one is just contacts, people that I want to put in there for future reference. Number two is follow up. So that's something in my inbox that I have to do something on quickly. And that's where that goes right away. And that's something that I am looking at daily. Number three is tips. Like if I have a tip or something or a brainstorm or something that I want to do, I throw that in there. That's like a reference folder. And then the to do folder is more of a longer term thing. He mentioned things like, building a deck or making vacation plans, this and that, and whatever that you want to do at some point in time. But that's out there. And then my next folder is appointments. So anytime I have an appointment that's made, I put that in that appointments folder, which I go to that every day too. I mean, the message here is use what you're comfortable with, and but you have to use something. I mean, what I'm doing works for me.
Yes.
What I'm doing is working for you, but you got to do something.
Yeah, and that's why David Allen refuses to mention specific pieces of software, because he's very clear about You have to find the process that works best for you. And the one thing that most people leave out, though, Chip just mentioned that one of the things that David Allen includes as projects is building a deck. And this goes into what I wanted to talk about, open loops. People are very good about getting their work organized, but they fail to do that same thing when it comes to household projects, things they have to do with the kids, the family, friends. David Allen talks about the fact that all of this needs to go into a system. Because the fact of the matter is, if you have to schedule time to go to your kids' play, you need to block that same time out so you don't double book that for something from work. But all of these projects, and he talks about projects as anything that requires multiple steps that you want to complete in the next year. That's how he defines projects. And all of these projects, if you're not organized, create open loops. And an open loop is when you're trying to keep something in your head, the stress that it causes, because you're constantly thinking, oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, I forgot to do that. Because your brain does not function in linear time. The way your brain operates, it thinks everything has to be being done immediately. So anytime you say, you have to clean out the basement, every time you walk past the basement door, your brain is going, oh, you're supposed to be cleaning that. You're supposed to be cleaning that. So in order to close these loops and reduce your stress and operate more efficiently, all of these things should be tracked. Now, it doesn't have to be tracked on the same list. I am sitting at my desk right now and I have two inboxes. One inbox is for business, one inbox is for personal. But I have them both organized the same way so that I'm not constantly trying to figure out, oh my God, okay, what do I have to do next? All I have to do is take a look and I know. And that's the big advantage to the GTD system and being organized in general, is that you're taking that stress away. You're not spending all that time trying to remember what it is you have to do next. You check your next actions list, you check your inbox, you know what it is that has to be done.
Yeah, and in the book, I listened to the book rather quickly, but in the book, the old book, it's talked about, there was a section on getting projects creatively underway, the 5 phases of project planning. And then on the chart that he has from the new book, it's very, very similar. But he does have a very, very nice section on projects. Number one, obviously, is defining the purpose and principles of the project itself. Number two, what's the vision? What are the outcomes? What are you trying to get done by doing this? What's the projects for? Number three, in the book was called brainstorming. On the chart, it's called goals. And obviously, through brainstorming, you're going to get your goals together. And then number four says organizing in the book, and then areas of responsibility on the chart, which is really, really the same thing. And then, it gets to the next actions, which this whole book is about. So doing the flow chart, as far on the chart there from the projects, it has your project support material, which you have to review for all the actions that have to be done. And this is going to help you come up with your to-do list and so on and so forth. And then you get right back to, the inputs for the project. But it's all very well organized that way too. So, I mean, he has the inbox where you're going to act on it right away, covered and put it where it belongs, but also the project where you have the ability to plan it. And then you're going to throw the bits and pieces into that and into the same process as far as figuring out, are you going to do it now? Are you going to do it later? Delegation and so on and so forth. So it's really, really neat the way this whole thing's put together.
Right. And, I've talked to a lot of folks about organization over the years. And a lot of them, what their first thought is, well, I can't do that. I can't follow a to-do list because work is coming in that I don't know is going to come in. It just hits. And he talks about that there is a difference of doing predefined work, which is the tasks you have on the to-do list, or doing work as it shows up. And the key to managing all of that is understanding the difference between urgent tasks and important tasks. Something may be urgent but not very valuable. And something could be important, but it can wait. It can also be urgent and important, or non urgent and not important. When something comes across your desk, the first thing you need to do is determine, is it urgent? Is it important? If it's urgent and important, you do it immediately. If it's urgent but not important, you check your predefined list, your to-do list, to see if you have anything that's more urgent and more important. And so on. And that's how you determine where something that comes across your desk falls for when you do it.
Yeah, and again, one of the tips that I got that I really, really like is if it's going to take less than 2 minutes, do it now. Because I know that I waste more and more time by just ignoring something that I can make a snap decision on or make a quick call or this or that or whatever and get the thing done with. And again, with the goal being time efficiency, time efficiency makes you more efficient, plain and simple. So that 2 minute rule is one of the things that really hit home with me.
Right. And that actually affects a lot of people, especially when you look at it in terms of your email. As you're going through your email, if you can toss off a response in less than 2 minutes when you read the email for the first time, yes, absolutely send that off. Because one, the person that's waiting for your response can now move on to their next action. And two, you've removed this from your to do list or your email box. So it's one less thing that you have to be concerned about. The other thing with email, because we all get so many emails, is that recommends looking at emails your most recent first. Why don't you look at first in, first out? Because if the email has gone to multiple people, by looking at your most recent ones first, you can look at the entire discussion and answer rather than looking at a previous email that may only have partial information. So that's a very important tip for clearing your email and getting that down to zero. So we're already at just about at the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners from GTD?
Man, we flew through this. This is great. I mean, I just love basically the 5 stages: capturing the information, clarifying it, organizing, reflecting, engaging. The most important part of that is taking that inbox and putting it in the right spot right away in organization, like the book tells you how to do it. And once you have everything done, that first step that way, where you know where everything is and you know what you're going to do now and later on, and you have your handle on the project, the whole thing works. I mean, the bottom line is, as I said earlier, whether you use all technology or half manual stuff like I do, come up with your system, take these tips to heart, and just work it. And you're going to find that you are going to be a whole lot more efficient. And that'll help you get really psyched up too and happy.
Absolutely. I think for me, the big takeaways for GTD is one, the methodology is more important than the tools. When you follow the process that's set out to keep things organized and do it on a regular basis, you can use whatever tools you're most comfortable with. When you use the tools you're comfortable with, there's less resistance to actually staying organized. Go through the process on a regular basis. And he also points out something that I actually used this example in my own book, The Biznetics Way, is that if you think about your workspace, when are you at your most organized? It's usually the day before you go on a vacation. If you look at your desk every week, at the end of it, Friday afternoon, think of your weekend as a vacation, even if like most of us, there's some work you may be doing on the weekends. Take Friday afternoon, think about it going on vacation, and get yourself organized as though you're not going to be there next week. It works fantastic. And it also lets you relax more over the weekend. Again, even if you are working on a Saturday or Sunday, because you've gotten that organization out of the way. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.